thank you for this invitation, and I've seen all these awards. Actually, for what Lutfi Bey said that he started late in his career, I asked him how old he is, and I subtracted the age difference, and it looks like I started making angel investments at the same time he did. Starting late is never too late, I think. Also, we are living longer, it looks like, you know. I mean, we were programmed to live up to age 65, 70, but it looks like we are living longer, so alhamdulillah. There you go. Maybe I can start by telling you something interesting from my personal experience. In my early career, as I studied electronics engineering and then communications engineering and telecommunications, I was working in the field of networks, basically, as most engineers do. And one time I decided to take some extra courses. I was fascinated by mathematical modeling that can look into next generation products and then do some optimization. So I went to a 4-day mathematics course in Cambridge, I think. I was UK based at the time. And in that university, there were a group of very smart people telling us about these amazing complex mathematics that can be used for modeling and optimizing networks of that time and networks of the future. And I noticed that those very smart people were not working in engineering anymore. They were engineers, mathematicians, and they switched and they were working for banks. And they were helping banks do fancy trades. So in a way, when you know nearly all there is to know about your subject, and your subject is changing also every 5 years, I thought, why would these people be moving from doing things to just trading, buying and selling, and okay, doing it in a smart way? And over time in my job, I was interacting more with economists and banks because projects required project finance. And I noticed that when the economists and the banks were speaking, the engineers were going back, sitting in the back, and they were not speaking, included myself. I was young, and I figured that I don't like not to have a chance to say what I think, but I felt I didn't have the knowledge. So I went to a project finance course, which was a 4-day course. I went into that course, and I found a group of people whose job it is to make money from money, you know, trading. I could not relate to anything that they were talking about. The course organizer asked us who we were, you know, what we were doing. And, you know, there were traders, and there were a lot of engineers who switched into trading, and they were designing very fancy trading instruments, very complicated things. And when he came to me, I told him, I'm a network design engineer. He said, like, so why are you here? I said, well, most engineers, when you speak, they don't speak. So I'm here to understand whether you have anything you can teach me. So I said, okay. So we finished this 4-day course, and then I took the book. And the book spoke about project finance, and it said, you know, what is the secret of making money? I wasn't interested in making money, actually. It wasn't a motivation for me, you know. And I was reading about what this book, and this book said that the secret of success, according to these type of people, is you have to have 2 traits to succeed. One is you have to be very smart. Okay, let's say we pass some level of that. Otherwise, we will not be in the room. And what is the next one? They said you have to be greedy. So greedy means self-enrichment. That's why they are doing. They are trading. They are trying to make money. I was never motivated by money making for myself. But of course, our job was to make money for our company. So that's part of the job. So you get pride in that because the company should be rich. We should be equally treated. It's the concept of equal treatment. It means that we can be treated equally well or equally bad, but we're equally treated. So that was good enough for an engineer, you know. So I exited that thing, and I started to understand that, okay, so the sources of money are equity, and the sources of money are debt, and in the middle there's mezzanine. And I started to understand the formula of what drives business and what is the concept of an equity return. And started to understand, I was working then more with banks and what drives an investment decision, just to understand, you know, the side of how you can get money to do something. because obviously without money, we cannot do anything. So the sources of money, and I understood one very important lesson in my life very early, that the most expensive money is the shareholder money, which is the equity part, because the equity investor wants a return on the money. And that's the highest return. And the lowest cost of money is the debt part, because obviously the person who is lending you money is not taking any risk. And in the middle, there's a mezzanine. So therefore, that was the formula for getting things done, because the projects we were working on required an element of fundraising. So I started becoming more interested in how can we get something done. And the money part was the part of the equation. And I was doing engineering as much as I could, for a period of time. But I took that course. I was probably around maybe about 28 or something like that. And I continued working in the engineering field. But I had a clear understanding. Remember, in our generation, I mean, I'm over 60, so in our generation, there wasn't that much you could do yourself, whereas a lot of you people at your age, and definitely younger, and even older, that started late, there's a lot we can do now. There's a lot we can do. I'm not going to tell you much about Türk Telekom itself, because I think that you have seen now Argela and Innova, who were acquired by Türk Telekom in my time. But I will explain something a little bit about how such type of companies can, what could be a future of making companies. So the future of making companies may not necessarily be driven by an equity return, is a concept I would like to suggest, because if things are built solely on an equity return, venture capital returns are very, very high. And trying to raise that kind of money is expensive and complicated and difficult and very challenging. But of course, that's a good source of money if people can get it. I'm proposing the concept of corporate venture capital, which means that companies should make investments in startups and early stage companies. That companies should do that, in addition to funds and etc. I'm not saying that they should replace them, but companies like Türk Telekom and other companies should support young companies and get something in return for this support. So this is not, a social responsibility type thing. It is done for obtaining a return on that investment. And if it's a corporate that's making the investment, there is less self-enrichment in this equation. I have a problem with self-enrichment if that's the drive only is to make money. Of course, people have to earn a good living and they have to make money. I'm not against making money, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have reached this level in my life. I must give it some importance. But if that's the only thing that's important, I think that we will end up making less companies, less startups. The concept that impressed me a lot in this country when I came here in 2005 was, first of all, the number of people that were trying to build companies was already impressive enough to me. I was very impressed by that. That's when I met for the first time, actually, Argela company, Innova, were already offering services to Türk Telekom. And I was trying to convince these founders, these are founders of the company, that they should give up their shares. They should not keep their shares. They should let Türk Telekom buy their company. But they should stay in that company and work as an employee as opposed to as a shareholder. Now, thankfully, these very smart people who obviously turn out to be less greedy than the average person said, okay, I will sacrifice what I expected to earn from this company, and I will become an employee, and I will be part of building something. Now that's important because we can build more companies that way. Now I'm not saying that people shouldn't take shares. I will explain that in a minute. But what's very important, I believe, is that there should be this level of company construction coming from people who, some are entrepreneurs, they take shares, and some are not. Why I say that? Because there are many people who are working, who need to work, and they need to earn a salary. And that salary is important for their responsibilities. A lot of people who make startups end up with broken marriages and lots of difficulties in their life because they sacrifice too much to build that dream. And that price could be too high. in some cases. So how can one rebalance these things? Of course, one way of doing it is corporate venture capital. You notice now big companies, I mean, even Google have launched Google Ventures and others like them, and I mentioned them simply in the context that, of course, they are doing it because they want to be ahead of the curve. And you cannot do these things purely from venture capital type. And I believe that private equity is already an out-of-date phenomenon because private equity is a source of money that's trying to buy something working that is not that risky and then trying to sell it within 5 to 7 years and make a return. The average life of companies doesn't have the luxury of 5, 7 years anymore in such a cycle where you can buy it when it's already 10 years old and sell it when it's 17. You know, it's not going to be like that. So the world is changing very fast. With that will come, you know, the most interesting opportunities. And what is very exciting about this country for me, you know, is that also this is a very large country. I mean, so when you have a country of the size of 80 million, statistically speaking, there are enough smart people of this size so once the education standard is at that level, there are enough number of smart people with that percentage of a 5 million population is obviously a much smaller number than 80 million. First. Second, there's a large market. So when you are establishing a company, you can serve your own market before you go internationally. So these are very, very good advantages that are available here. I missed out on the advantages of angel investment incentives because these were introduced after I myself started making investments. We actually made 9 startups. In fact, the one company that Telekom did not look after was Sobe. They were in the games area. They pulled out, and out of them, 5 companies mushroomed. I invested personally in those companies as an angel investor. So obviously, when I acquired them as Telekom, you know, I believed in them. And as Telekom somehow couldn't manage their expectations, they left and established their own companies. I still believe in them, so I invested my own money in those. And obviously, I did that also for the same reason. Obviously, I expect to get a return on the money, so I have to have a certain level of that expectation. But then these people should also be able to realize their dream. And I knew that they have the ability to, you know, to do that. So what excites me about this country that is really incredible is that in 2005, I was trying to convince the employees of the company in 2008. We said within 3 years we'll go to stock market to accept to take a part of their salary in shares. And people didn't want to take any shares at all because there's an uncertainty about what the value would be and how much this country changed, you know, during this period. That the number of people who are now making angel investments is amazing. I mean, really, truly, I'm seeing so many people investing their own money, which is like, you know, some major, I mean, in 12 years, I've seen people take a risk which 12 years ago they were not prepared to take. This is truly exciting about this place. So the level of talent and risk-taking that is here, so you are all, you know, very lucky and privileged, and we are hoping that now in this stage of Telekom's life, it will be pushing more corporate venture capital investments because, frankly speaking, you know, old companies are not good in doing angel investments. Of course, Telekom has a program called Pilot. I was very impressed. They did this pilot program, really very, very exciting. And, you know, but the people who did that will remember in 2007, we were sitting in Ankara, and I was trying to convince a famous university in that big city that let us start an incubation center. And we were negotiating with the university. This is pre-Technopark. We were trying to negotiate that we will build a building. And they were debating with me that who is the architect who will be designing the building. I mean, so it took us a year and a half. And actually, by the time I left the company in late 2010, and I left OG Telecom mid-2011, they had just started building that building. It took something like 4 years to get the permission, how it will be funded, what rent will be paid, which now, of course, are no longer problems at all. I mean, also when we went to ITU first time, we were negotiating for the building. It was an existing building. We had, because we were ahead of the curve. You know, we started a little bit early, which is a problem I have suffered a lot in my life. I always started ahead of the curve, and then, you know, then of course things are not right, so you slip. So starting a little bit too early sometimes doesn't help, but there we go. And now to see these companies and to see their founders stay in the company and build them to this level I think something that we should thank these people for, because this is how, things can happen, I believe. The other thing I'd like to mention is about life is not about engineers, and it's not only about engineers, actually, and that I find is the most exciting thing. I mean, if today I could go to a university, and when I went to university in 1973. In 1973, it was very clear in my mind that I would not be able to accept studying anything other than electronics. I wouldn't accept anything. That's the one thing I wanted to do. If I wanted to study today, for example, I wouldn't study engineering. For example, I would study something like neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and I would study cognitive science probably, which would also have philosophy and psychology and language and anthropology. And in those days, these things didn't really have that much value. But I believe that today, those are much more important or equally important. In some companies, they could be even more important than the engineering part. Because, let's face it, engineers are not very good in doing more than engineering. Actually, engineering, admitting the limitation that we have, we are very good in doing one thing only. Somebody give us a problem, and they give us the time and a budget, and when we solve that problem, we are very, very happy. But is this what the world is about? It can't be. So, building companies today involves multidisciplinary contributions. And to be purely technical is not enough. In fact, the jobs at risk are mostly the technical jobs. Let's be facing this reality. So now there are a lot of tools, and these tools need to be used by anybody who is capable of using them. And that doesn't mean technical people, but also people who are not technical, who have a strength area in sales or marketing or something creative in an area that can design a product out of something and know how to price it and sell it in a way that other people didn't. So that also is an era of great excitement to me. It means that we are on an equal footing, that the opportunities are very large and the market is large enough to absorb it. The people who don't take risk will not be able to succeed, but I always caution people, don't take too much risk in the context of, it's a simple formula we tell to people who want to be entrepreneurs. If you have a good job and you believe in startups, keep your job and invest your money. Keep your job and invest your money. If you are going to leave your job to make a startup, don't invest your money. Give your money to your spouse, your wife, your husband, and give it your time and let someone pay you some money and get some shares. Thank you.